Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies through the neck this episode are...
Hey, I'm Paul. And guys, I know that Games Workshop is a British company, but who knew that they're going to write an entire book about George III? Get it, because he's the Mad King and he's rising.
I don't. This is America.
Hey, it's Paven. Do you know the early aughts country classic that Dawnbringers sing while they are out on Crusade?
No, I don't.
Oh, it's Sigmar Take the Wheel.
All right.
And I'm Will, and at this point, I feel like Nagash and all of his Martarks are the new Wu-Tang Clan based on how hard they're trying to protect your neck.
And I'm Aaron, and mine actually is trivia in that it's a little known fact that a long time ago, I nominated that our local gaming club should be called the Mad Kings because we lived in Madison, and I got shot down. And in this episode, we cover the lore of Dawnbringers, the Mad King Rises. Remember when we talked all about Ushoran a few episodes ago? Well, guess what? We're not done. Will we repeat some stuff from that episode? Probably. Will there be new stuff too? Maybe. Is there a whole other Dawnbringer Crusade outside of Ghyran? We'll find out. Join us, won't you? Hey, everybody. No, I'm sorry. How are you tonight? My fellow diminished gods.
Oh.
That's us.
That hit me in the core. Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, hanging in there.
Sure. As a diminished god, that makes a lot of sense. Paven, how about you?
I'd rather be diminish in Shaish than be big in Azir.
Okay.
I was trying to do a play on words here, but you also serve in hell in the mortal realm. So
also true. Glad to hear it, my friends. I feel like it's been a little bit since we've had an episode. I blame it on me. I'm the bottleneck oftentimes. But we're back in the saddle again, talking about these Dawnbringers. They keep bringing that dawn, and we're going to keep talking about it. That was weird. That was a weird thing to say. But before we do, I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you've been up to in the old hobby. And let's go in the same order. Hey, Paul, tell me about it. What you've been hobbying on?
Well, you mentioned a diminished god, and I just painted a diminished god. So thank you to GW for sending us a couple minis ahead of time. And I was able to paint up Sekar Fang of Nulamia, but as with everything, I couldn't just paint her as normal. I had to convert her into a sorceress / female warrior for my Hardcover army. So I had a lot of fun painting that one up. So
I know that has nothing to do with spiders, but did you put spiders like legs on the snake or something like that?
So I'm trying to do the Hardcover army more of an octopus theme because they have 8 legs, right? But I don't have that many octopus bits to put on there, so I just gave her I don't know. She fits in with the army, and they all have octopus themes on everything else. So I figured it was okay to go with one of them.
Sure, cool, very cool. Ronna, hey, Paven, what you been working on in the old hobby? In fact, I think I know, but I'll let you tell them.
Well, why don't you tell me?
And I've seen pictures of zombies. Is the extent of my knowledge.
Oh yeah, you're abusing those admin privileges.
Yeah, sure. I'm just always looking. I'm always creeping.
You're creeping. Yeah. I'm working on some zombies for. I'm not even sure how they're going to be used, but they're for Adepticon for one of the Dogs of Warcry events. So that's the inside scoop there. I'm actually almost done. It's been fun to try to just paint a bunch of guys really quickly, which I don't often do. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also working on finishing the Black Talons.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
A box of really cool models. I actually really like these sets, and it seems like they're going to do another one for the next book. We know about that. That's public, right?
You must. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Must be
revealed. Yeah. I think they're really cool. And it's like a box of characters, and they're all really dope. And I'm really enjoying this one. Although I'm painting them up not as what's the main storm heroes? Not as Hammers of Sigmar, but as my Ghyran guard. So I have to call them something else. I'm working on. I'm thinking instead of Black Talons, going with White Claws.
Nice.
But I don't know if that's used for anything else.
No, I think that's all yours. TM. Dibs. Clever. Cool. Hey, Will, what you been hobbying on?
I mean, since we're talking about the Mad King Rises, I painted up the Mad King himself. Once again, thank you to Games Workshop for sending us that model. Painting him up and then just working on the rest of my Flesh Eater courts. I think I just have 2 units of horrors left, and then they'll all be painted, and then I have to start basing.
Sure. Very cool. Right on. Can't wait to see the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle.
Well, you'll probably have to because it takes me forever.
Nice. On my end, guys, you know I'm always working on Warcry terrain. However, let me tell you a horror story, a terrible tale fraught with peril. I'm missing one little bit from like one of the bamboo structure things from the Warcry tree terrain thing. It's like one of those protruding like bamboo things that you put in the side, like where the cross beams are, and it sticks out the side. There's supposed to be like 6 of them or 7 of them or something. And I only got 6.
Uh-oh.
That has completely derailed every bit of hobby for the past probably 2 months now, that I cannot get past that. I can neither proceed nor go do something else because it's what's on my table. And it's really making my head spin, you guys. So I don't know.
You could just convert
exactly
it.
what I'm going to do about it. No, well,
like balsa.
shut your filthy mouth. No, can't do any of that. So I don't know. I've been like set up all sorts of eBay alerts to see if anybody's going to sell that like one sprue. Of course, no one is. Who in their right mind would? I don't know what I'm going to do. I might just have to give up the hobby entirely, frankly. So that's where I'm living. That's where I exist in the hobby space right now.
It was a good run.
You're saying that you've gone out on a limb, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah. God, it's literally, I mean, it's just right here. This is where I keep them. There's 6 pieces in here, not 7 like there needs to be. It's absurd. But hey, that's how the, I was going to say the dice roll, but it has nothing to do with dice, that's for sure.
That's how the bow breaks.
Yeah, there you go. Any other hobby factoids, progress that people want to share before we keep on keeping on? Too late, missed your chance. But before we do, we're going to get to that story phase. Just you wait. But let me talk a little bit about our Mortal Realms plugs. And now I'm really self-conscious about the Mortal Realms plugs because I had to listen to Will do them last time. And it really made me reevaluate like how I sound when I do it. But I'm going to try and get out of my own head about it. And we're going to go through them quickly.
I set that bar real low, so.
Yeah, it's true. Hey, people, you can find more episodes of this podcast and all our other shows at themortalrealms.com. Don't forget that you can email us your feedback at mortalrealms@gmail.com. And speaking of emails, we got an email from our dear friend Max, and they write, "Hello. Hey, Max. I really enjoy listening to your guys' podcast and how deep you guys dive into the Realms lore. Thanks. I really like that about us, too. This is the only podcast I have really found that does the lore justice." That's very kind of you to say. Anyway, my question is, and he proceeds to ask a question about a previous book that we already reviewed that wouldn't apply here. But he wants to know about King Broad, and I think we talked about King Broad in a previous Dawnbringer book, and King Trug, which was in those previous Dawnbringer books, but we haven't seen him in a long while at this point. He also wants to know if they've gone deeper in the Ionis Cryptborn story. Again, this is a very late email. Yes, we've talked about Ionis Cryptborn in previous episodes as well. But I wanted to do you justice, Max, to make sure that we did see your email. And I am going to read it on the air. And we appreciate your enthusiasm for the lore. So he says, thanks again. No, Max, thank you for writing in. And dear listeners, if you want to get an email on this illustrious podcast, I can't promise that you will, but if you write me something, maybe the spirit will move me and I'll read it. Like I just butchered it just a moment ago from Max's email. Thanks for taking the time. Where else? What else we got to talk about? You could find our Patreon at patreon.com/themortalrealms to support the show, get early releases of the story phase, and access semi-exclusive content like the Pocket Realms, which are short story phases hosted by Davey and myself, Aaron, as well as, did we cut out the Warhammer Bros a little tidbit here? I don't think so. I mean, guys, if you want to listen to Paven's foray into 40K with his brother, you can also find that on Patreon as well. And if you can't or don't want to pitch in monetarily, and that's totally fine, head on over to your podcast service of choice and give us a review or like a star rating or like a high five. I don't know. I don't review stuff, whatever it looks like on that end. Or go ahead and tell a friend about the Mortal Realms. We really appreciate it. Hey, that's it. That was it. That was painless. That didn't hurt. And then one last thing before we get into the story phase. Oh, God, I'm just rambling. But we do want to thank GW for sending us the book of Dawnbringers, The Mad King Rises, to review. So they send it to us so that we can talk about it to you people. And so it's a nice little system we've got here. Really appreciate it. So thanks. And dare we move on to the story phase and get me to stop talking?
The story phase.
Yeah.
In the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms.
You guys, we made it. Story phase, Dawnbringers, Mad King Rises. Book 4, right? 4? That makes sense, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay. We did it. We did it again. I ask this all the time, and I'll ask it yet again because I'm nothing if not consistent. But just to catch people up, if for whatever reason this is the first Dawnbringer episode that they were going to listen to, which I don't recommend it, but that's fine. What do the people need to know? Like, what do the listeners need to know going into this? And I'll let you guys define that in any way you want. What facts, events, people, places, things, mineral? I know, and that's not part of that. Do they need to know about if they want to walk blind into this here episode? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I can. Let me give it a shot.
Please.
Okay. All right. So to catch people up, it's been a while. One city. It's in 2 different realms, 2 worlds.
Oh, you're going deep. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. It sent out double a crusade out of each side. So there's 2 crusades, double trouble, and they're going terribly.
Not well.
Yeah, they are. And so we'll tackle each one. I'll do a recap of each in turn. And then everybody jump in and correct me where I got it wrong. Okay, so first one, actually, Realm of Fire Crusade, heads out, runs into Bloodbound. That goes fine, except their leader, who's really great, has to go back to Hammerhall because it's under siege.
I mean, honestly, a little too great, which is why they had to send her back, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't be much of a story.
Sure. That's Talia Vedra. She went back to Hammerhall, but the crusade gets taken over by religious zealots, and then they go to truce break, and then a big old troll named Trug comes in, smashes truce break, and the crusade runs away, and they barely escape, and then they run into dwarves, and then they run into elves, and then they run into more Bloodbound, and they barely escape, kind of by fighting and running. And they are joined by the Black Talons at the end there, who are a elite assassination Stormcast group. And so they've kind of made their way east. They've taken heavy losses along the way, and they've become more and more religiously kind of excited, we'll say, the whole time. And they are led by Pontifex Zenestra, who is the High Matriarch of the Cult of the Wheel. And the bad thing about the Cult of the Wheel is that they don't really like using wheels, which, are
sounds
sometimes
ironic.
useful. Yeah.
She does.
I mean, not always, but sometimes, yeah.
Okay, so that's one half. It's going not great in the hot area. Down in Ghyran, in the kind of jungle zone, there's like a curse that's going around that's making people really lazy and lay down and die.
Sure, I've got that curse too. I think I know that. Yeah. I know that curse intimately.
It comes through, especially in the winter. But the crusade goes out. It fights Maggotkin. It fights ogres. It fights Ironjaws. They meet up at Fort Gardus, and Fort Gardus also gets smashed by a bunch of destruction forces. This time by the King of the Gargants, King Brood, who smashes the entire fort. And the Dawnbringers run away again, and it even kills Gardus. Who was there and also dies. But he's a Stormcast, so he's going to come back. And then so they flee away. They run into more ogres, and then they run into eventually Kragnos. But then dragons come, and Kragnos and kind of the dragons fight and run away. And so they're like, weird. But also the Sylvaneth that were helping them go away. Mm-hmm. They've also taken heavy losses and have run away a bunch. And now they are heading north towards the Neck, which is a isthmus, which we're big fans of.
Yeah, can't get enough of this isthmus.
Yeah, I'm like, hell yeah, famous isthmus, that's us. And their leader, his name is Marshal Thorian, and her life powers are awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's a cool thing that's happening. But otherwise, she's just a regular cumin general leading the force.
Nothing special.
She doesn't even have a bespoke model, which makes you really nervous for her.
Oh, yeah, there's no way. Yeah. She's gonna take the whatever the Ashy guy's route out is.
Oh yeah, and what are you mentioning our dwarf friend?
Oh no, the human guy who dies at truce break, but he didn't have a model either, so we know what happened to him. So.
Oh yeah. What did I miss?
I don't.
I don't know if you missed anything. I think you mentioned ogres twice, and I think they only showed up once. Other than that,
That's fair.
Ouch. Got him.
no, I mean that's 95%.
Sure. I think there's been some things that have been peppered in that may inform the story, and that I think a lot of the the big reveals of this one have been foreshadowed a little bit. In that, like, we know that there's this weird wine in Hammerhall that's making people act crazy, and we don't know. Like, we're gonna find out more about that. So I suppose we learned it in the Battle Tome, so like we know about it already.
Yeah, we should mention that there's a rumor for the Ghyran Crusade. There's a rumor of a Summer King in the north who may be a great ally to the Crusade, and they're heading north that way. He seems like a good, ominous guy.
Summer. I mean, everybody loves summer. Summer's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Summer. Hot King Summer.
Sure. How do you say her first name? Soulbright Astrea. Astrea. We know that she's hunting for the information about the flaws in reforging, and she found herself in Shyish. But oops, nope, she got teleported to Ghyran through some weird tattered flesh banners.
Piece of
something.
Art. Yeah,
sweet piece of art. So like that might come up at some point. Were there any foreshadow stuff, like the smaller foreshadow things that may pay off in this book? Besides that, those I think 2 big ones.
Well, just the little short stories I've been putting on Warhammer Community, which is where we got the idea that Astrea was going through portrait, etc. So the stories are really cool. Mm-hmm. So they're definitely worth a read, and they add a little bit of texture to the story. So.
I hate to say it, but they almost come out a little too fast in that, I miss every other one. Like, if I'm not, watching closely, and then I look back and realize that I, skipped 3 of them. And I'm like, oh, dang it. I got to go read these other ones. Any other hindsight stuff that folks ought to know about?
Trying to think, and I don't think so. We did get, the Warhammer Community stories kind of setting up some of these other side characters like Sakar and... No, I think that's the only one that we know there's a vampire doing stuff.
Neat. Well, then let's dive right in. So the book, I think, starts with the Ghyranite Crusade. And to pick up from where Pavin had left off, it's the Crusade is moving northward. They're heading towards the neck. And before they get there, though, they give us a little bit of the lay of the land or the state of the Crusade, I think, right? They don't just immediately roll up to the neck. What kind of state are they in? How do we find the Dawnbringer Crusade after their misadventures over the past 3 books? Any thoughts there?
They're a little fractured because we're finding them hours after Kragnos just showed up and started hitting people with his mace. And then their good allies, the Sylvaneth, are also leaving. And because this crusade is coming from Ghyran as well, there are a lot of members of the crusade who are really in tune with the Sylvaneth, and they decide to also leave and just follow the Sylvaneth and just go their separate ways.
Well, yeah. Not only do they decide to leave, some of them are actually kicked out of the crusade because they start feeling the call of the hunt, and they get a little bit more feral, and they start draping themselves in fresh animal skins and really kind of not being as disciplined as you need a standing army to be. And so eventually they're just like, hey, if you want to follow Balthanos, who is the avatar of the hunt in this part of the world, just go. And so this, they're called the Kin of the Stag, and they just get kicked out. So that further depletes the crusade here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was awesome because right away when they announced that Dawnbringers were a thing in AOS 3.0, I made a Cities of Sigmar army that was devoted to Alarielle. And so I've already got this army pretty much all done. So it was fun to see that that idea also pop up in the lore as well. Mm-hmm. So it was cool.
And they spent a bit of time talking about Marshal Thorian again, and then she gets a fun new moniker, I believe, right? Because this is maybe the first time that we heard that she was called the Dame of Leaves, or has she always been called that? She hasn't, right?
I feel like it's new.
Yeah, right. She's grown into it. I mean, literally, maybe grown into it. Isn't she turning into part plant or something? Isn't she physically transforming?
Right hand
Yeah.
Which is super interesting because that's what Alariel's model is too. Alariel's model only has the right hand that is actually oak. Everything else is human. So I thought
Or
that
elf,
was
probably.
Yeah, elf. You're correct. So I thought that was super intriguing that we're getting a human with the exact same mutation, as it were.
I really like Sylvaneth, and I like when things get Sylvaneth-y. However, the one strike against it is I would wish she was like more elven, like her. Like I wish the Marshal was more, like, not so much a human and more my wood elf favorite. But that's fine.
Yeah.
Beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. I'll take what I can get. So that's pretty neat. Other state of the Dawnbringer Crusade before we get to where they get to.
I just want to mention, it sounds like the Shutter Blight is back. We didn't hear about it a lot in the last book, but it seems to be like affecting the rank and file again, this kind of depression disease. And like Nurgle's on the rise again, is what they say. So his forces are mustering around, like kind of near-ish where the Dawnbringers are encamped. So it kind of further, like, makes their situation more desperate. Like they need a move because there's, forces kind of gathering around them.
I was surprised to hear them brought up again, and I wonder if it was explicitly just so they had a motivating impetus to keep them moving forward, right? Like you can maybe wonder, like, well, why don't they just hang out for a little bit and rest? And so, like, oh, okay, and move where they can because Nurgle's back, so they got to keep.
Oh yeah, just let's make the base here.
Yeah,
this is the base right here.
Yeah. So carry on, they do. Those wayward sons, that was weird, and they head up into the neck, but they can't travel for much farther because they are, I guess, stopped is the word. By what, my friends? I didn't see this coming. What is impeding their advancement?
A wall of bone.
What? In the realm of life? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's not just regular bones. It's special shaped bones from the Ossiarch Bone Reapers.
I know those guys.
It's
in a weird place. What are they doing here?
Yeah. It is the model that they put in the Ossiarch battle tome for the wall, and it's one of the coolest things. Every time I see pictures of this, I'm always just like, this is absolutely amazing.
So, talking about like that custom terrain thing that you can't buy, and it
exactly, and it makes me jealous every time that we can't buy it because it looks so freaking amazing.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. So
again, I know this is a radio show, but like, is it made up of other bits of other things, or is it completely its own thing?
My understanding is that it was like custom made. Like some of it, maybe some bits, but I think it was like custom sculpted by one of the designers. And they were just like, this will be cool for ourselves, right? Yeah. It didn't actually go through the work of like putting it on a sprue.
They sell. I mean, you guys sell models, GW. You could just like you can make it and like sell it to us. I would give you money. I'll be your first customer.
Ooh.
Or second customer after.
Is it like an official title? Like first customer? That'd be a sweet title to have. I buy all the things they released for this system.
First sword. I think it should be a title. I like where your head's at. But yes, they are stopped at this wall of bone, which is, I was going to say, what is it when someone stands on top of a wall mounted by a liege? This is liege Horrocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Who is some bone reaper. I'm sure he probably matches a particular role, but I can't remember what it is. I guess because he's not on a horse, so he's not a cavalos. He's some other sort of liege. And he says, whoa, back off.
I thought you said he wasn't on a horse.
Yeah. He says, he pulls a you shall not pass. He says, back off. This is not a negotiation. I'll tell you what, if you want to settle right here, right now, that's fine. I won't even tithe you for, millennia. I don't know, some absurd amount of time, centuries. I'll leave you in peace, because obviously we all know that the Bone Reapers kind of work on a longer time scale than maybe the rest of us. And it's a real like sudden, abrupt confrontation. Like, hey, here's the deal. You can back off, or you can stay here and don't mess with us. And we can have an understanding. And so then the Crusade has to sort of quickly think on their feet. What are we going to do about this? Am I misrepresenting the situation at all, or am I missing anything about the situation they find themselves in?
That's kind of where they're at.
I really enjoyed the fact of how much personality this Liege Horrocks has, because he just seems like he is done dealing with all of this. Like, I wrote in the notes that he looks like he's on hour 94 of a 60-hour work week or something like that. He seems like everything is too much at this point. This is a problem that I do not want to deal with. just like go away, or like, stay there. That's fine. Whatever. I'll let you be. Just don't make me file any more paperwork as to what's going on here. Right. Like I'm just here. This is my job. This is what I'm doing. Move on.
I feel like the Dawnbringers caught him in the middle of a smoke break, and he's like, oh God, please don't.
Yeah.
Well, and it's particularly funny because like they find him, that Dawnbringers don't know this, but we as the audience know that, like, we kind of find him on the back foot because Alariel's Right of Life has introduced some cracks into his wall, basically. Like they're not at their best right now. And so maybe he's too busy trying to shore that up, or he himself is not at his best because he's sort of beset by this life magic. And so like he's kind of putting on a front some degree, as sort of being putting on the airs of the threat, but like we as the audience see the cracks in his facade, and I think soon the Dawnbringers do too, because they do not run and hide or retreat. They do not take his offer, but rather they attack, which good for them. Good, don't fall for it, my friends. So how's this attack go? Someone describe it to me.
I enjoyed the kind of like dramatic tension here. So basically the way that's written is we have Thorian, who is discussing with Liege Horrocks what's going on, and then like sending secret signals to her captains being like, hey, does anybody think we can actually take this out? Right. So like she's trying to have this conversation with Liege Horrocks, who's really not there to have a conversation. He's just like, I just want you gone. Meanwhile, she's having these secret communications with her leaders, and one of them is like, hey, we can do it. And of course it's the female who is in charge of the cannons. She's like, we got enough stuff. We can make this work. This is totally fine. And they decide that, yep, this is how we're going to do it. So they start loading their cannons and like shooting everything. And this was what I thought one of the coolest things in the book is they talk about the special ammunition that they have called Weirdron seeds.
Weird.
Yeah.
And I like basically it's a cannonball that's also a seed. And when it hits, it just sprouts life. And I'm like, this to me is one of the things that I love about AOS, and I want to see 100% more, where you can add just a little thing that adds so much texture and like understanding to what the realm is like, then that really makes a major difference towards the plot. Because this is something that wouldn't happen in any other realm. They wouldn't have these Weirdron seeds, but the Jade Council apparently had been preparing them for forever, right? And when they actually hit, they actually need magic as well to continue to make them sprout. And so Thorian basically uses everything that she has to cause these seeds to sprout and these plants to go through, which basically makes a massive hole in the wall that they're just going to push through and move on. But Thorian herself passes out. She's like, all right, I've done about everything I can, and peace out, I'm done.
I think they're cool. The seeds are neat because they were just going to use them to like grow, I think, like hedge walls or things like that, right? Like just as like they were just going to use them to plant and that way. And they're like, nah, what if we shot them? What if we shot them at these dudes? Yeah. Let's see what happens. And so that was fun.
I was going to say the other cool thing is because it's Bombardier Major Esmeld, and we get a little bit about her background. She's a Dwarden, the last survivor of a strong point overrun by Geists. So she's carrying what is like holy silver bullets with her, so she can finally get her vengeance against the undead. And she leads the Ironweld, but also a little bit of grudgement of Clan Rutar. We got Dwardens, I think, showing their face for the first time in this crusade, which means they've always been there, but they haven't been doing anything. So they finally got up and had to save the humans from the undead,
dusting themselves off. Yeah. So they break on through, right? They break on through to the other side, to borrow a phrase. And they're able to push on through. And so like, I remind me guys, I have to differentiate between what I know and what like we know in this book. Did we know why this wall was built already from Dawnbringers, or is it because I came in with prior knowledge?
I think we can assume, because there's also like a cutaway a little bit previous to this, and I don't know where I get to, where a bunch of vampires are scheming and trying to discuss like what to do with this crusade that's coming north, and how that will affect the Mad King, and if he will suddenly feel a sense of like feel sympathy for the humans,
Sure.
and that will mess up their plans. And so it's a little ominous, and I think we can the wall isn't to keep people out,
You're not locked in there with him.
Like, what's so cool about like this battle is it's like, our protagonist is the Crusade, but this is like not about them. He's like, hey guys, this isn't about you. Just go away. This is something else. You don't know what you're getting into. But we battle north anyway.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't really connect the dots until like right the second. And the reason he doesn't care is because he probably doesn't care about what his, like he was given this guard duty that I'm sure he's not a big fan of. And like, that's probably informs a lot of his personality in terms of why he acts the way he does. I'm sure this is the last place that he wants to be. I'm now realizing. So sorry. What's your name? Liege Horrocks. Sorry, Liege Horrocks. This is not your fight. So
I'm just I don't know if it's worth jumping ahead now, because I don't know if it's worth circling back later. But since we know he gets defeated in this battle, and the Dawners go further north.
Yep.
But later in like kind of a sum up to what happened to him, he is like griping because he knows he's going to be turned into something humiliating for his loss. He's like, oh, what am I going to be like? Am I going to be like in a horse skeleton later? Like, this stinks. No.
I love that they know about it. Like the classic skeleton is that skeletons don't have personalities, but the cool thing about the Bone Reapers is that like they have wants and hopes and dreams and aspirations, and I guess the opposite as well, as they have fears and things that are going to be thrust upon them if they don't succeed. So yeah. So push through they do. I think do we shift scenes after they are sort of victorious at this wall?
We do, but real.
Oh yeah, please.
Quick. The thing is, they push through multiple different holes in this wall, and the terrain isn't even. It's kind of rocky and mountainous. So now the Crusade itself is just fully scattered. They're just kind of running through the wall, hoping they can regroup at some point down the path. And that's where we sort of get sightings of little creatures kind of scrabbling along the rocks with them as they move up.
And they're sort of being watched. Like every good D&D party, they split up.
This scene reminded me, GW made a custom board for Lord of the Rings where they had Shelob was chasing characters through tunnels. And so it reminded me of that board where we basically have these funneled valleys, as it were, that are right on the other side of this wall. And people seem to be like near enough to know that somebody else exists, but too far to offer any assistance or anything like that, right? Mm-hmm. And it just leads into this labyrinth, essentially. And I think it also is intended to represent the physical change of the land because Ushoran is here. Like something about what he has done has made a difference. And I thought there was a really kind of cool little piece here where they were talking about, actually it's a little bit farther on, but I think it works here. The ground is occupied by these solar shrines that the Flesh Eater courts have stuffed corpses and stuff into to make them into nexuses of power. But I'm wondering what civilization was here before that would make these solar shrines. I thought that was kind of a fun little textural historical thing that I hadn't heard of before. So I thought that was cool.
Through any of the stuff that we've read, did it allude to what was in New Summer Court before he got there? I can't remember if it ever did.
No, nothing
that I know of. But that makes me really, really curious as to what was here before.
Sure.
So
right on. All right. So now the scene shifts to another fun character whose name I couldn't pronounce earlier. It still can't. No, it's Astria Soulbright. We pick back up with her where we left off, which is she had gone through what are they called, Realm Gate, and popped into Ghyran, to a deathly environment that I think she was surprised to find herself in. What does she find? Where's she end up? Tell me about what Soulbright is doing.
So we find her as the Crusade finds her, because as they're going through the valleys, they just see bolts of lightning up ahead. Mm-hmm. And they come and they just see her and her like troops just kind of hanging out surrounded by ghoul corpses, just chilling.
Sure.
And as they're trying to figure out where to go, some random Ironweld apprentice just murmurs like, "Oh, we should go see the Somber Paladin." And they're like, "What do you mean? Who is that?" And he has no idea what they're talking. He doesn't even remember saying it really.
Mm-hmm.
But Estrella picks this up because the Somber Paladin is who she's looking for.
Okay. Perfect. What a coincidence.
Yeah, that's great, right?
Let's go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that is what they do. And so I remember, are they like escorted, like, or because how do they go from killing ghouls to like being guests of honor?
They start walking and then they are kind of found by a bunch of ghouls and invited by Sakar.
Yeah, so it's like a pretty tense scene. So they get to this castle that's kind of in the center of this, Scooby-Doo land.
Sure.
And like a bunch of ghouls come piling out of the castle, and they're just like, no. And then they're like hitting them with lightning and like with hammers and stuff. But the ghouls like don't fight, and they kind of just like rank up and order up as much as they can. And then they're like, "Oh, come on in." And they're like, "Oh." And then like one of the vampires that is there. Oh, what's her name?
Sakar.
He's like, "Oh, the Summer King invites you to dinner," and they're like, "Oh no!" And then so like, but they're kind of surrounded and outnumbered, so they go into the spooky castle.
Having us for dinner, that's a double meaning. We hear it.
Hey,
have them for dinner is have them over, I guess, for dinner is what they end up doing, and they are guests. And so this is always what I think Sakar was afraid of, is that like it's the magnanimous part of the ghouls, and they see these Dawnbringer Crusades as something to be protected or celebrated or welcomed, even if they themselves can't truly welcome anyone or protect. I mean, that's their version of welcoming is utterly mad. And so she was, I think she and her vampire friends were like nervous about this, but they knew that if they got in the way of it or tried to object, Ushoran would have some thoughts about that. And so they had to sort of play along, which is, I mean, really the theme of Flesh Eater Courts is just playing along with these people. So
yeah, and the nice vampire. So like, maybe we should go over the factions at dinner because
Please.
It becomes important. All right, there's the ghouls led by kind of a mysterious king that we haven't seen yet in the narrative. But so the ghouls are there. This is their turf. Then there are the vampires. There's vampires in the ghouls that are crazy, and then there's like handsome vampires that are there as like kind of ambassadors from death,
diplomats,
and they are kind of in charge of like getting the King's Blood wine and using that to destabilize Sigmar's empire. That's going on. So that's kind of their grift at the moment, and that's what they don't want messed up by the Dawners. Then there's Asteria. I want to say Asteria.
I don't know. There's too many vowels in that.
We're going to come up with 17 different pronunciations.
Yeah. Soulbright, who's there to learn, and she doesn't really care about the crusade. She just wants more knowledge on how to defeat the curse, and she thinks this king, the Somber Paladin, will give it. And then there's the crusade that's kind of just swept up in it, and it's not the full crusade because it kind of broke apart and got lost. It's just like the general Marshal. Oh god,
Thorian.
Nice Marshal Thorian and her like retinue and honor guard are coming to dinner. So it's those, and then there's I guess we'll say one more. Who's the Grand Justice?
Gourmain.
Gourmain's kind of in there too, and he's working with the beautiful vampires because he's sane, and he's like, okay, their plan has merit, but he's definitely faction ghoul. So he's also playing a game.
He's a wild card. Yeah,
he's a wild card. Yeah,
I love that there's literally just one sane guy who has to deal with all of this nonsense, and like he's becomes the focal point for the narrative. It's like
has to or gets to, right? Like, I mean, depends how you look at it.
I mean,
he's like mostly sane, but he also sees the delusion. Like he's like, he's the most sane.
He's got a foot in the boat, a foot on shore, a little bit.
Mostly sane means partially insane.
Yeah.
And I just want to say I love intra-death conflict. I think it's the most fun because they're supposed to be the most unified of the factions because it's supposed to be just all skeletons all the way down.
Yeah.
But like their conflict is really good and always super petty.
Mm-hmm.
and I truly enjoy it as like a way that like it's not just like good v evil. It's like evil versus also weird evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right.
I want to say I really like the shots that they set up with the miniatures. They've done a lot of scratch building, which I think is super fun. On page 14, they have a really cool picture of a tablecloth for the dinner. That's literally just like a bunch of skin with a bunch of pieces of bones, etc., laid out on top of it. And then on page 15, they actually have like some super sweet paintings, little miniature paintings that they've made and put on the walls. So like,
Oh yeah,
I thought that was really well done, and it added so much to the reading, in my opinion, because it made everything seem a lot more fun and engaging. So I know it's not part of the lore per se, but I think it adds to the lore when you see pictures of how
they're
cool they did that kind of
really setting the scene in Dawnbringers. Like you're getting a great visual of what's going on, which, as awesome as Broken Realms was, it was hard to actually visualize what was happening in some of those scenes.
And now the listeners are getting a great visual in their brain as we talk about it. So,
brain visual.
Super
the best type of visual.
Yeah. And then we, as Paven pointed out, we have all of these factions at dinner, but they're all kind of scattered. They don't know why, but the ghouls are insisting on a really random seating arrangement, which I love, because they're just like all maybe wearing loincloths for some of them. They just look like feral cavemen dudes, but they are also just like rushing people to their seats, making sure you're in your right spot, trying to get the airs of aristocracy and fanciness in this meat dinner that they have.
Meat dinner. That's what I'm going to start calling my dinners. Meat dinner.
You got like 1,000 ushers and like 14 guests, and they're just like all shoved all over the place. It's great.
So
nobody can understand the ushers. That's my favorite part. Is like they're all speaking gibberish. They're like, you go here, but they're just hearing screaming and being like shoved, but not killed. So therefore, it's all okay.
I remember the little cutouts of the battle tome where of the guy who was like captured by the flesh eater courts, but like over time he started to like really ingratiate himself to them, or vice versa, I guess. And so that's not explicitly spelled out here, but I bet you there's a couple Dawnbringers who are like, you know what? It's the nicest place I've been. So dinner begins. I think most people are abhorred by the spread quite a bit, and everybody's sort of on edge and doesn't know what to do. Is this when Ushoran comes through, right? Like this is when he makes a big grand entrance, right? Like at dinner. Tell me about that if y'all want.
I think only the fanciest restaurants serve steak tartare. So obviously this has to be a super fancy restaurant. But basically he comes in and we're basically told what's going on from the Dawnbringer perspective and from the from the Stormcast perspective, where they just see this massive Hulk wandering into the dining room, and kind of lucid, kind of not. There's a bit of a speech going on. There's a lot of just formality. So if you weren't to, say, be there and witness all of the awfulness, get it? You would think that this is actually a really nice dinner party. But it's just kind of crazy to everybody there, right? They're all just like, this is just weird and this is not great. And Sekar and Gormain end up having this little bit of a conversation off to the side. So Gormain, again, is the mostly lucid member of the Flesh Eater Courts. And she's like, I'm kind of not okay with this because I don't think they should be here. I don't think he should have invited them. Like, this just doesn't work great. Kind of as a tie-on to the previous conversation they had. And then Sekar like leans over to one of her vampires and is just like, hey, why don't we just like go encourage something to happen over there? So we get a real feeling of courtly intrigue going on. And we go over to the Bombard General.
Wait, hold on. I just want to freeze right there because things are about to pop off.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
But before that, I want to mention that some of the humans there, they see a really like a kingly king come down. like a beautiful man, handsome man.
Handsome
and they're
man.
like, okay, maybe it's not so bad here. But Estria, our difficultly named to pronounce Lord Arcanum, does see through it, and she knows, okay, this is a really gross giant vampire. But she goes and talks to him, and she's like, "Hey, can you give me the secrets of life and death real quick?"
Yeah, just he'll cook me up.
yeah. And she's like, and she's also knowing, like, it's trying to like pick out the dynamic that he seems like a little agitated, but like then the beautiful vampire is like, oh no, just okay, you're nice. And then he like calms down a little bit and stuff. And so like, okay, there's a lot going on here, and she is like trying to work her own game to try to get this information out. And then like during that conversation, I guess we'll jump right back to Paul.
Switch.
So we have this vampire going over to the Bombardier General, Esmeld. And as mentioned before, like, she really hates the undead, right? As Will said, her entire strong point was wiped out by the undead. And so all it takes is just basically one little whisper to set her off. And she shoots the Summer King in the chest, right? And everything breaks loose. Ushoran turns around, runs out. All the ghouls just start killing, eviscerating pretty much everyone within reach.
Wait a minute, Paul.
All right.
There's a couple of things. One, those were silver bullets, like blessed by the ashes of martyrs. So it was like, it wasn't just like a bullet; it was like an undead killing bullet.
Sure.
So it does serious damage to Ushoran, or so it seems. And he flees away, and yes, things break out, but it's not. The violence isn't random, right? Like there are in particular people picked out for the violence, right?
Yeah.
And Will, who is it?
Yeah, so Paul said that the ghouls attack everyone within reach. That random seating arrangement that happened before wasn't actually that random. And instead, Ushoran was placing his biggest and strongest right next to all of those beautiful vampires. So when they started going crazy, oopies, all the people who were whispering in his ear and controlling his court are suddenly being ripped to shreds.
Yeah, and the vampires are all separated and spread across the room, so they can't they're very powerful, but they're overwhelmed by the ghouls who are weak, far, far more.
Sure, like divided and conquered kind of a little bit. And I don't know if it's right away, because I mean, I'm sure they defend themselves for a bit, but like eventually the vampires realize that they got to get out of Dodge. And so Sakaar has in some ways planned for this contingency because she's very smart and is always one step ahead, or at least not one step alongside, I suppose, because she probably wasn't ahead here. But she had already plotted out an escape route. And so at one point, maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, but at one point they do make their way through these catacombs underneath the castle. And that was always they're going to be their way out. And so she never thought she was necessarily going to have to use it. But now more so than ever that her forces are being separated and divided and overwhelmed by the ghouls, that's a great opportunity to make yourself scarce.
Yeah, and she has a really cool moment where she notices the seating arrangement and notice how the vampires are being overwhelmed and attacked. And she was like, was this all part of the game?
Recognized game.
I think worn up on this Summer King the whole time, and that he was just kind of a crazy idiot. But was all of this part of the plan? And she's like, okay, well, I got to get out. It's time.
Yep.
This the party's gone sour. The cops are on the way. Gotta go.
Sure. Crazy idiot like a fox. Yeah.
And on her way out through the catacombs, she runs into her co-conspirator, Gormain, who's waiting for her.
Weird.
Except he's not there to help her. He's no longer got that flash of sanity behind his eyes, and he's instead there to issue the judgment of the king. And that's when she realizes she was definitely a few steps behind the Mad King as he plotted her demise.
Yeah, and he charges her with regicide because he knew enough to know that she kicked it off, but not know enough to know what anything else that's going on. He's full in delusion at the moment.
Yeah, but she still escapes though, right? Like what I forget what he's not gonna be able to take down a vampire.
There's like a battle, it goes back and forth Warhammer style. There's like one of those vampire palanquin models, that big old weird kind of floating chariot kind of thing. Well, that thing gets blown up at some point.
Yeah.
And the snake uses its finishing move, which is sucks all of the souls that are left, or like the death energy, just out of the room and swallows it like a snake god might. And that kills everything except Gorman gets away, and but she's able to escape. But she doesn't like using the super move, because there's an off chance that this god could get enough power to become like god power again, and then she's in big trouble.
Sure, exactly. And I love probably more than anything when you describe our character super moves. So that's a real highlight for me as a listener of this podcast. So escape, she does. She was not in the driver's seat this whole time, but rather just another pawn to the Mad King. I think it's around here where Estrella follows Ushoran, right? Like she hunts. She's like, whoa! He goes fleeing, and she goes after him because she's not done with him. But things don't go well for her either. What happens then? You sounded like you objected. Like things did go well for her, and I don't think that's true.
No. Depends what you're into.
Yeah, because she shows up and she finds Ushoran in the library, and she starts asking his questions. Only he just sort of stands up and, like Wolverine style, the silver bullet just kind of pops out of his chest, and he no longer has to pretend he's fully crazy or pretend he's weakened. And they just have a nice conversation about morality and honor. And then he starts killing all of the Stormcast very brutally. And he starts having a meal of her. But he's very generous, because it makes the note that he gives her enough time to scream as he's doing it.
She does not discorporate like quickly, which is messed up.
I also like there was a little detail in there where it talked about she communicated with the other Stormcaster with her using electrical semaphore. And I thought that was a cool little touch to add, like how to have combat language. So I thought that was super fun.
Another fun note of this is, like, during this big fight where all these Stormcast are fighting Ushoran, she does try to grab some of the books out of the library, hoping that they'd have the cure in it. Because all things considered, she's still a giant nerd.
Why would there be an 80s band inside of a book? And never mind.
The cure.
Yeah. So a couple just a little details to add. So like the Stormcast split apart, and like half go to defend the Crusade, because we need that to keep going, and then half go and chase Ushoran. And then they do have like a big kind of a combat of words where she like tries to appeal to him and get him to give up some secrets, and calls him, like, tries to appeal to his better nature, but he says it's all a ruse. Like everything's a ruse. Like I knew what was going on the whole time. And even back then, when I had this nice persona, when I was like a noble knight of death, back in the Age of Myth, that was also a ruse. I think and there's a lot going on here. Like, how crazy is he, and how, like, not as crazy as we thought, but he's still like, is he like justifying his delusion? Is he like, how aware? Like, maybe he's only aware part of the time. Like, what's going on? But then eventually he's like, yeah, if you want some books, come and take them. And then he just goes nuts on the Stormcast. There's also a great piece of art in this book.
Yeah, it's one of the best ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, this is like probably number one rough Stormcast death, because usually they explode into lightning or they go straight to hell. But either way, it's quick. But I've never heard of it going slow purposefully.
Yeah.
Like, just like saving the killing blow while you like eat. This is like really graphically.
It was
like you eat her alive. Yeah.
Carved her into raw chunks, wolfing down storm blessed flesh. My biggest concern, because like she's got a named mount. Don't ask me what the name is, but her mount is identified. Like, what happens to the mount? Like, is it okay? I don't know. I hope it's fine.
Yeah.
Guys,
He went to a farm. Yeah, I hope
does-
we continue with this character because this is great character development to get eaten alive. Like, I think this would do something weird to a Stormcast.
Well, they did a pretty good job of even setting her up in the first place. I don't know if it was in this book or in one of the community short stories, but like she's from Hish, right? Like she has a little bit of a background as to like where she comes from, and like it would be such a waste to have gone into that level of detail. Even it's still just a short story or some blurb somewhere, but like it's not nothing. And so like and plus she's got a model, so they're not getting rid of her, right? So like, well, I'd be interested to see what comes of it eventually.
Yeah, it'd be cool if she gets Thunderstrike armor, and then
sure,
it's got a special vampire job or something.
Have they referenced Thunderstrike armor at all in any of these Dawnbringer books? Like when Gardas dies or when she drops? Like, does it even talk about like the cursed skies or anything like that? It doesn't.
It talks about cursed skies because when Gardas dies, like we all know he's coming back, but it makes a note of like with the Crusade, they don't 100% know that Gardas is going to come back, so they still like held a
vigil,
like a vigil, celebration of life type thing for him.
Gotcha.
Just in case.
It doesn't apply.
They talk about how like the chamber there in the Sacrosanct chamber like was kind of is like late. It hasn't gotten a lot of the new Thunderstrike armor, or am I just imagining that?
You're right, they haven't, but they haven't talked about it.
Well, maybe they literally have because they haven't redone the models, but like,
yeah, exactly.
I thought that was mentioned that like some chambers are getting it sooner than others, but that might be my own dreams.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's always just a function of whatever models they want to end up doing, right? So like they could say whatever they feel like because we're at the mercy of plastic.
This is an interesting thing because
I'll be the judge of that.
We'll find out. The previous book with the Long Hunt, we saw Vandus Hammerhand, who was the like leader of the Stormcast half of the first edition starter box. And here we have Estrella Solbright, who she wasn't the leader of the first edition of the second edition starter box, but she came out in that release cycle. Mm-hmm. So we're getting some of those like edition starting named characters coming back into the story and actually doing stuff.
Sure. And it has nothing to do with this book whatsoever, but what's his face? The other, like that, the guy that we always talked about was never going to come back up again, but he got a short story in Warhammer Community. Gabriel Sherhart. So like there's another name character from early days that I think is showing up in these Dawnbringer things, but this is not a short story review. It's a Dawnbringer Mad King review. So that's what.
Just real quick, it's so great that that Age of Sigmar's been around long enough that we can like have callbacks to characters and feel like a nostalgia for them.
Yeah, isn't that silly? I mean, what has it been? I mean, 9 years ago, I suppose, when Age of Sigmar came out. So that is a chunk of time. But like, and we're such suckers, isn't that like just how nostalgia works? In that like this nerddoms that we like get into as soon as they start throwing us stuff that we recognize, we gobble it up, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it.
Yeah. And I was like extremely hesitant with like first edition Age of Sigmar. Like I had some real qualms with it, but now like looking back on that stuff, I'm like, good old days.
Yeah, man, if you could tell yourself from back then to be like, this guy that you're maybe poo-pooing about, you're gonna love when he shows back up in 9 years from now. Yeah, you're gonna go wild.
That does bring us to the like end of the main section of the Ghyran Dawnbringer Crusade, which. Just like the first part, this latter part also isn't really about them. It's about the internal politics of this Deathly Court, and the Dawnbringers just happen to be there and be like the inciting incident for Ushoran to rise.
I kind of like, and I think we talked about this before when we talked about like the Vandus and the cool thing, and that like I think this is really neat to use this as a mechanism by which for you to see other interesting things going on in the realms, but from the perspective of Dawnbringers, and they're just like the vessel by which it's a small world after all cart that you ride along with, that you can see these big things as you sort of drive by and look at these big events that they get like wrapped up in. I'm sure there's a term for what that is from like a narrative perspective, but like this, yet again, another example of looking at big impactful things as you sort of drive by it from a Dawnbringer perspective.
I think we call it Forrest Gumping.
Okay. Yeah. All right. There you go. I'm sure that's good.
So, okay. So, but let's talk about what, like, immediately, can we talk about the aftermath after their, like, after this moment? So, okay. So immediately so it switches back. The camera focuses on the Dawnbringers remaining in the Summer Keep. Yeah, they're still here. They're not dead.
Yeah.
And they're preparing for a last stand here because they're surrounded by ghouls and it's horrible. And but then Gourmain shows up and says, "You're actually all free to go. Good luck." And then because like Marshal Thorian was like really tired and kind of just ready to die. Like this all has sucked a lot. And
I lost my hand.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm so tired and it all on me. And there was like a relief in just fighting these monsters to a last stand. But like, no, she has to go on. And she like marches her people out. And with the remaining people, she lost a lot. And she knows they're either being eaten by ghouls or turning into ghouls. And it says like, as she marches out, like tears are streaming down her face, which is real sad. And I was like, oof. So but the Crusade lives. It maintains its command. You hear about a few little snippets about what is going on for the other like parts of the Crusade that is lost in this, really spooky Halloween town. Do you guys want? Is there any? Do you want me to go through them all, or do you guys want to like pick out the ones you like the most? I have them all.
I was just going to call out the Clan Rutar one because I've mentioned like, hey, they finally showed up. We've got Dwarden. And then they get cornered by Ghoul Kings and almost slaughtered. And the few survivors now have eternal grudgement against the Summer King.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Dwarves! Yay, dwarves are finally in the story.
And they're gone.
Who knew? Yeah, another really rough one was Magister Thyrm, who was a druid or one of the green cloaks that had accompanied the crusade, and he had a retinue to protect him, but they were lost, and what they found was him and his retinue turned into a meat tree, or like a tree made of human parts by the ghouls, which is really rough and gross. So that's a bad way to go as well.
Yeah, and they say that like everything is like a branch of a tree. In my mind, it's like a weird version of like one of the Necropolis Stalker OC Bone Reapers they have with a bunch of heads and a bunch of arms, but with the skin still on it. Yeah.
Real rough.
Yeah, not great.
And then there's a last one with Sub-Marshal Karos. His group is actually fine. They find an unspoiled spring in the heart of the area, and they don't really remember it, but they got a drink of water, and now they're ready to keep crusading. Probably fine.
I'm sure nothing weird happened. I'm sure it's no problem. Like, and I love the idea that we have the cities of Sigmar people going to a spring, like the Bretonnians worshipped a woman at a spring, but then just kind of showed up again. And then, So I thought that was a fun little call out.
What do you guys think it was? Like, or is there no way to know? And it's meant to be an unknowable thing.
It's a big thing of blood and they just drank it.
Yeah. I'm assuming this shows up later.
Yeah.
Like, maybe not a good sign for the future of the Crusade.
Yeah.
They think so? Okay.
They talk about how, and then they explicitly talk about later about how much of the Crusade has been infected with the ghoul curse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All of the necromantic shrines exude the curse. And I think just being around Ushoran is like, ground zero for that stuff. So we have to assume that the Crusade is heavily infected with a big old ghoul problem. But we don't really know what happens next. This is kind of where the action leaves.
Yeah.
I will say, at the beginning of the Dawnbringer series, I said that the Ghyran Crusade was going to be a successful ghoul crusade. And you may think that this being book 4, and we know there's a book 5, that I would be persuaded against my ideals. But no, I'm doubling down harder. It's just going to be all ghouls at the end of this.
It doesn't look like a bad prediction.
No, I think you're fine. Yeah. There's no reason to back off of your initial prediction.
I just assume like, if Ushoran is gone, therefore it can't be it. But nah, everybody's sick. Let's go.
I love that like the main theme of the Ghyran Crusade in this book is basically just like a bunch of tired characters just dealing with other people's crap. Right, like Liege is just like, I'm so tired, I don't want to deal with this, and like Sekar is like, I'm so tired of dealing with this Ushoran, I don't want to deal with this, and even like the general of the cities of Sigmar is just like, all right, fine, let me die. I'm so tired of dealing with this. Just let me die, it'll be over. And like, oh nope, sorry, y'all gotta like actually deal with the consequences.
I also like the Crusade is just like them quarantining different groups. Like you guys have the Shredder Blight, you guys have the weird hunt thing,
Yeah.
the stag. You guys are ghouls. Who's like? There's very few normal people, but they're still trudging along.
Sure.
Speaking of having no normal people, I feel like it's time to go to Akshi.
What are you talking about? They're full of normal
Things
people.
are even weirder. I don't know.
Sure.
I feel like
They're just normal men.
yeah.
All right, Action Crusade. Unless anybody has any other Ghyran thoughts. All right, Action it is. So we kind of did a State of the Crusade for the Ghyran side. What's the State of the Crusade on the Action side? Someone remind me. How are they faring thus far?
Well, I think they're basically like, all right, we just got completely wrecked by the Ideneth, and bad things are happening, and nobody knows what's going on except for what's her face, and I'm just blanking on her name.
Pontifex Zenestra or Neve Blacktalon?
Except for Pontifex Zenestra. Like, everybody's just like, Pontifex Zenestra is the best thing, and she doesn't know anything that's going on, but we believe in her, so therefore everything is gonna be great.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
On top of that, we also have very similar situation that the Ghyran Crusade did of like, oh, we allied with the Fire Slayers. Well, now they're going to go fight the Troggoths. Oh, we're fighting the Ideneth, and now we're allied with the Ideneth, and now they're gone also fighting Troggoths. And now we've got Neve Blacktalon in the Stormcast. All four of them, because Vandus and those Stormcasts helped us, and then they wandered off.
Mm-hmm. It's a good thing we still have Talia Vedra. No, wait, no, she left a long time ago.
She wandered off too. Weird.
This is ridiculous.
I feel like at this point, 90% of the people like lost from these crusades just sort of left.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they
Like
all have some
casualties.
real like abandonment issues at this point.
Yeah.
Sure. And I know we're skipping over the different perspective, but I just wanted to get the lay of the land of the Crusade first. But I know we
Hold on. Can we quickly check in with who is the dwarf from the first book? Fury?
Fury, yeah.
Yeah. Is he? Did he actually leave on the Crusade? Did he go with?
No idea.
No, he never.
He's like,
We're hung up on this guy who never even stepped out.
Let's leave him in our back pocket. He could still,
Sure, I'm not
He
done
could
with
be
Fury
like-
yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Ghyran Dwarden, where he's there, they just don't talk about him until he shows up in the last book or something.
to get killed.
Actually, he's
I was
actually a
here the whole
ninja fire
time.
slayer. He's just like secrets himself all over the place. He's going to show up as like,
Just
the assassin
remember,
rules.
he had a destiny to survive and to do something.
As
Don't forget his destiny.
Like, if it was just to survive,
Declared on the
he just
Mortal
like
Rogues
went
podcast.
home, had a steak. It was great. Nobody had any mess with him. It's fine.
okay, so you're talking about people leaving, and again, I know this is a little out of order, but that we're not done, right? Like, so you mentioned the Black Talons. What's their story? What are they up to lately?
So it's a weird change of perspective because they're out there doing their cool assassin things and they're sort of escorting through the Crusade. And they notice, oddly enough, that there are vampires nearby. So Neve Blacktalon has this cool idea of, well, we don't want the vampires to attack us. So let's get a bunch of people and let's attack the vampires. And that's going to work out perfectly. Because I'm Neve Blacktalon. I'm definitely not going to lose a fight.
Sure,
Yeah,
I have a name and a model, so I'm fine.
Did you mention like what they were doing?
Sure. And now we can talk about that. Let's mention that. I wanted to start with the Dawnbringer perspective just to acclimate people. But actually, this section, dear listener, doesn't even start with the Dawnbringers like you would expect, but rather it's out of left field. We start following our favorite bestial vampire lady, but Laukavai. And apparently she's kicking it in actually too. Hey guys, where'd she come? Why is she here? Where'd she come from? What's the deal?
She has a weird call out against Prince Vordhai, who is also a named character who's just a weird alternate build of the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
But it's House Castelli versus the Avangori Dynasty. Vampire on vampire action. And it's all about just honor. They're making these plans to meet up and duke it out to claim one person has more honor than the other. The problem is the Avangori vampires are a little bit more bestial. Some of them kind of went off the leash and started having a nice little dinner of Dawnbringers.
Oh, shucks.
And that's going to come back to bite him. So before she can even get to her vampire on vampire fight, she's got to take on these Dawnbringers. And she has a little bit of time because for those who don't know, the Castlite dynasty, they live in the Crimson Keep, which just teleports every day. And there's mostly no rhyme or reason, except they know every 127 years or something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to show up in one specific spot, and actually that is just a hop, skip, and a jump through a realm gate away for Laukavai. So they decide, next week 7 p.m. we're going to meet up, we're going to fight, we're going to call this, and then we're going to be good. But before then, she has to deal with the Dawnbringer Crusade.
Just a question. Has this rivalry always existed and I just didn't know about it, or is it made up for this story?
It's a bit of both. It's been mentioned before, but it's never been like front and center. A big thing is, I can't think of them right now. Paven, you will know. The
Askurgan Trueblades.
The Warcry Vampire Warband, the Askurgan Trueblades. They're very aligned with the Castlite dynasty because it's all about honor and stuff. Mm-hmm. And Laukavai is the one who killed all of the originals back in the Age of Myth.
Oh.
So they don't like her.
Well, it's kind of weird, though, because her name is Laukavai, and Vai is also the last name of the member of the Askurgan order that she killed to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and she
was a member.
Yeah, she also follows the code. That's part of her backstory. So
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. But one of the things I love about this section, though, is like to start off, like, oh, all right, we're going to get into actually everything's going to be like killing everything. It's going to be great. And we start off and she's just like meditating. And then she's just super annoyed that people are bothering her right now. She's hanging upside down in a tower. And she's like, this looks like a great place to meditate. And then people start shooting cannonballs at her. And she's like, really? Like, I just, okay, fine. I guess I got to go deal with this. So I was amused by that.
So it sounds like, so who struck first, I guess? Was it the Avangori or the Dawnbringers?
I think it was the Dawnbringers. I think I misspoke earlier.
Gotcha.
Because Neve was like, hey, we got to go get them before they get us.
Sure. Classic.
There is a cool little thing in here, though. The reason why the castle apparently shows up, though, is because upon the day that it was said that Nagash devoured the ancient cinder god, which I was wondering, is that a reference to Hashut, to the Chaos Jordan god? Because he's the god of the forge, so the god of cinders. So it could be Hashut. It also could be, theoretically, it could be Grungy? No, who's the Grimnir? It could be Grimnir. So either way, that's a story I'd like to know. Because if it's a god of death, I'd love to know that, or if it's a Hashut thing, that'd be great. So I thought that was an interesting little thing.
If Hashut was defeated, man, we may never get Chaos Dwarfs. So don't put that juju out there. He's undefeated. Right. He's doing just fine.
Fair. It's unaffiliated Cinder God.
Independent in all ways. So cannonballs start flying at Laukavai and her group. I don't know, her battalion of vampires knocking towers down because Neve decided that they needed to strike first, right? Was this a good plan? Was this worthwhile? Did it pay off for them?
No, it was really bad.
Surprise, surprise.
So they didn't know at the time. They're like, oh, we got a special guy, special gal. Like, we're going to be fine. But the vampires had a specialer gal.
More specialer.
Hiding in the tower. And she kicks everybody's butt. And then she flies to the Aqua. Did we talk about the Aqualith yet?
Not yet.
No, tell me about it.
Okay, so the reason they're over here anyway is that, they're dragging around all these flying islands called metaliths. And one of them, and that's part of the Crusades. They just drag around these islands. They're useful because they float.
I would too.
And one of them has the Aqualith, Aquifer?
Yes. Aqualith,
which is an aquifer of a type.
I think.
Which is, which has all the Aquafina that the Crusade needs while it's in the desert.
Hey guys,
it's their main one. But it gets really windy and it blows away like a balloon, and so they're chasing it like a with their arms outstretched.
Like the movie Up, yeah,
and then it blows right next to the scary castle. Neve's there, and Neve is always making bad decisions, but usually they work out. And so, what's her name? Oh, God, I'm so bad at names.
Chicana.
Lucara? Laquavai. She gets really mad because they hurt her bestial children. And so she wants to punish them. And she does so by flying through, knocking over some black talons, and doing an evil ritual to the Aqualith. And she completes the ritual without Neve being able to stop her. And then she flies away. She was like, okay, good enough. And so she flies away, and then the Aqualith no longer shoots out water. It now shoots out blood. Not as good to drink.
Nope.
Well, I mean, it depends who you are, though, I suppose, right?
Yeah,
like some people prefer it, depending on who you are. So this obviously is a blow, and also diminishes Neve's standing, I think, with the Crusade, because isn't it around this time where they're like, WTF, Neve, what the hell? And that she gets, they get indignant, she gets indignant, everybody's indignant about all this, and it's around now, I believe, where she's like, fine, we out then, if that's the case.
There's a really cool moment here where they kind of put her on trial a little bit.
Yeah.
But they don't really have jurisdiction over the Black Talons, but there's like a big argument, and some people speak like kind of the non-religious speak on behalf of Black Talon, and the more the religious folks are like, what did she do? And they're right, like she totally fricked it up.
There you go.
And then so the trial is going on, and then and like Neve's just taking it, she's fine. But then Hendrik, who's the old wolf, who like kind of is like the mentor / kind of in charge, but not really. But he's not, but he's like,
he's got a nefarious streak though too. Like he's mysterious too.
Oh, definitely mysterious. And so Neve is just taking the abuse, but then they notice like a little bit of sparks starting to fly, or it just like the smallest hint that she's starting to get angry. And Hendrik's like, we gotta go. We're looking at Excelsis Part 2 over here.
Yeah.
And so the Black Talons dip out, and everybody is kind of relieved.
Yeah. Well, I love his excuse, because like the person in charge of the Crusade, who is definitely not Pontifex Sinestra, it's just a different marshal who has the wheel symbol etched into his forehead. He's like, well, how come you led this attack? You're not a part of the Crusade. And Hendrik's, yeah, we're not part of the Crusade. Later.
See ya.
just leaves. I love it.
Neve leaves.
Hey.
Because they sound similar. So yet again, another example of abandonment of these Dawnbringer Crusades. But that doesn't matter. They've got Pontifex Sinestra, and they continue on. Do they know where they're going? What drives their direction now at this point? I got to remind myself.
Well, the original plan was to go east, break through the Skaven, and settle on the coastal lands out there that are, I don't know, nicer because you have like a beach, right?
Easy peasy. Yeah.
They must have followed through exactly what they wanted to and done that plan, right?
Right.
Yeah. But they, I think it's the first time actually them telling us where they were trying to go. I'm like, oh, we were trying to go there. But then it says like, there's no way. They don't have the water for it. It's too hot.
I love the idea that like nobody looked at the map until this point of the crusade and went, "Oh crap, we did not go the right direction there. This is not going to end well."
Yeah. Well, they expected to have more water than they have, which is not very much. And so then like there's like kind of a little bit of infighting, and there's two camps, right?
Yeah, we've got the religious folk hanging out with Pontifex Sinestra, following the cult of the wheel. But then you've got like the more normal folks following a freshly graduated from the Academy Marshal a guy named Fungus Smold. He's just a junior officer of the 14th Leaden Bulls Artillery Echelon, but everyone kind of thinks he may be the illegitimate son of the first, I guess the second Marshal, after Talia left, the guy who took over and then blew himself up.
Yeah, Malchorn.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Disgraced and then redeemed Grand Marshal Malchorn, or just regular Marshal Malchorn.
Yeah, I think we're just regular Marshal.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of people taking the role of Marshal for this crusade. It's hard to keep them all tracked.
That's not a recurring theme at all, that everybody just keeps dying.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
So-
the Crusade, we talked about this at the beginning. The Crusades are doing poorly.
they're not great.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Smold keeps smoldering over in the corner because
Hey.
he doesn't think Pontifex Sinistra has the best ideas for the crusade in mind. And so there's a bit of a back and forth. There's a bit of a split between the two of them. They, basically make sides. And then early one morning, he
Wait.
aces.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Before you get to that, I just want to say, there's two. So what each of them want to do, Pontifex Sinistra and the quote unquote wheel nuts want to just go. And they're just like, hey, Sigmar is in the driver's seat right now. Sigmar is in my passenger seat. And we're going to be fine as long as we have faith. And you're like, well, that doesn't seem like a great idea. And then Thungust and his faction want to go home. They're just like, we're just going to go find the first Marshal and then we'll come back. Or we'll just go all the way back to Hammerhall. Either way, I think this is done. And I'm like, well, that's giving up. I don't like that either. But that's kind of the two ideas, is forward or back. And then what happens, Paul?
One morning they wake up and Smold has just run off. And they're like, oh, he was making a mess anyway. It's fine. And then more units just start running off after him. And they're like, yeah, no, we didn't know this was happening, but we're going to go now. And they're like, okay, well, we're still okay. And then they go look at the food stores and go, oh, he took all the food. So great. So now what do we do?
Yeah, so not only are they dying of thirst, now they're going to die of hunger as well. And I think it's around this time where Sinestra's zeal is zealous or whatever, and she starts having visions and she starts dreaming about this keep of blood. And it turns out that she's having this dream about that very blood keep where the Castelli vampires are going to go through, and everybody's like, what? You want us to go there? That's insane. But she's like, no. They're gone by now because that was days ago. We're cool. We should head in that direction. And yada, 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 they do. I mean, was there more to the decision to go that way other than it was a nearby place to sort of hunker down, right? They needed to go somewhere, and that was close by. And there was a vision, and she's not one to deny visions, right? That's kind of her deal. So
Yeah, so all we have left is the nut jobs. And then we also have elves and dwarves who had their reasons.
sure, you keep your secrets, elves and dwarves.
Yeah, I just thought that I was like, okay, we gonna find out what those reasons were? No.
Why would we do that?
Yeah, why would these elves and dwarves hang around with these nut jobs? But either way, they keep heading out, and it's battered, and they don't have any food or water, but they, through grit and desperation and having no other choice, they make progress. They go.
Was it a crusade or more of a funeral procession? I believe the book calls out. That's how in dire straits they find themselves in. But they do head towards that keep, that ruin, that city of demise is what it's called in here. And I'd be curious to know what did they find there? Because the vampires are gone, right? So that's one concern they no longer have to deal with. But do they find it uninhabited? What do they come across?
Well, there's a city there, and it's all ruined. But in order to get there, there is an astral magnesis.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a lightning weather.
Yeah, like a lightning.
We're like, oh, lightning, Sigmar, this is good. This is actually a good thing. And a bunch of them get electrocuted to death.
Yep.
But they make
Too much of a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they make it through that. It's also worth noting that the new Marshal Ashtar, becomes the one of the palanquin bearers of Pontifex Zenestra, because those are getting swapped out more and more. Because I don't know if we know this explicitly, but she obviously sucks the life out of people that are around her to maintain her power and her quote unquote, well, not youth, but her not dying.
Yeah.
And so
you can't prove that. That's hearsay and slander. I think.
Okay.
We don't know that to be
true. Sorry, I apologize.
Guy.
Yeah, so they start finding their way through, and just like how in Ghyran, if they needed a wall move, they called in the Dwarden. Here, they need to get rid of all this rubble to get out of their way, so they call in the Dwarden, Clan Grimglint, who just start clearing a path, and they are also just yelling at anyone who can't keep up and make their way into the ruins.
There you go. I like it when they name the clans.
Yeah, it feels nice. Like, we've got named regiments and named clans.
Yeah.
So as they clear the rubble, what do they find here? It's not just a ruin, but like there was evidence, right, that there had been a Crimson Keep here at one point. Mm-hmm. Like what else is available here? For them?
They say traces of ectoplasmic gore congealed all over the place, which.
Yeah, they find like twice dead things all around, dead vampires. There definitely was a big vampire war here that is over. And the Dawn is probably like, well, we're glad we missed that.
But it turns out, right, it's not completely uninhabited. As they're sort of pouring through the place and investigating and looking at this ectoplasm and stuff, do they just come out of nowhere? Is it like there's this mortuary, I guess, cult or necromancers? It's basically the extra Legions of Nagash type models who sort of arrive and sort of spook. You try to haunt the Dawnbringers, right? Like what do they learn?
Yeah, these like ghosts show up and like in the ruins, they kind of realize that this used to be called Ember Guard way back in the day, and they see a lot of signs of almost like spoked constructs and circle designs that obviously means that it's wheels. But then this like mortuary cult shows up and lets them know like, oh yeah, every 107 years, the Crimson Keep shows up, kills everyone that's here, and then leaves. So we're here to make sure you're not here 107 years from now when it happens again. And we're telling you that so you can give up on this place, leave, and be fine. And then Pontifex Zenestra orders the attack.
Yeah, I don't think so. There's wheels all over this place, dibs. And then yet another Warhammer battle occurs between like just the hanger-on necromancer and there's what's the big centerpiece model that they've got, the
Mortis engine,
right? So it's the Dawnbringers trying to fight back, and of course the more zealous of the followers of the Cult of the Wheel, their attacks become magical and they can actually strike down different ghosts and things like that, because they have the power of Sigmar at their side. And so they eventually overcome this ragtag group of undead or like death worshippers.
Well, they have like zombies and stuff, and there's a zombie dragon there. It's like it's a substantial
ragtag.
Okay, they don't have okay. And our friend Marshall Ashtar, who we mentioned before, kills a zombie dragon. 1v1s it.
Buddy.
Cleave the beast's head from its neck. Must be nice. That's cool. At that, doesn't Zenestra use her super move again, right? Does she have to do something like that to like overcome the...
Yeah, she like does a ritual / spell and drag as the metalith comes towards the middle of this old ruined basilica. And this is like she's trying to purify it, and she she summons a bunch of Dawners who each had they carry ashes of fallen crusaders, and they pour it in the corrupted aqualith, and then a bunch of magic shoots out of Zenestra that is both gold and purple.
Hold up. What?
Purple magic in Warhammer means death magic.
Mm-hmm.
Why is she using death magic? That's interesting. Also,
is there a dead body on the back of her?
Yeah, they seem to suck the life out of people, so there's something going on there. And then and then she chants a spell that is never darkened in Azorheim Cathedral. So this is a unique thing to her that
ominous
on the up and up. And it says a funeral spell syllabically.
Yeah, that's how I would.
I've never heard that word. Yeah, but syllabically reversed. So I guess she said it backwards. Is what happened. And then she turns translucent, and light shoots up into the sky, and holy lightning blows up the Mortis engine as a side effect. That's great. And the undead all start to fall apart because they lose their kind of tether to the realm. And then Zenestra collapses, and the Aqualith is cleansed.
Yeah, and everybody all parched falls upon it and starts lapping up the water from it. Their eyes wide, tongues flapping, they fell upon the Aqualith in a parched frenzy. I don't like that vibe. I don't like that scene.
Yeah.
And so they have succeeded. So
we did it.
Cured their Aqualith, right? So now it's not blood, it's water. They've driven off the necromancers, the death faction from this keep. It's going to be another 107 years before they got to worry about vampires. Let the future people deal with that one. Present day folks are kicking it. And they found a nice little, and there's evidence of wheel motifs, and they take that as a sign as I think we're going to probably hang out here for a while.
Yeah. Did they do it? Is this the city?
It seems.
I think they did it.
We did. Big mission accomplished. We found the city. New city of Embergard 2, son of Embergard. Nothing bad ever happens to Embergard.
Embergard.
The Axian Crusade is the successful one. Who had that on their cards? I can't remember what I said. Someone, dear listener, tell me what I said previously and let me know which one I thought.
I think our argument, if I can remember all the way back to episode 2, was they had more named characters, particularly our dwarf friend, and so it had to succeed.
It had to be them.
So we were right. We were both right, and our logic was sound.
Sure.
We did it.
I thought it was a shame that, of the two crusades, the Ghyran crusade, and at least in this book, it ended with this big fight, and Ushoran's there, and he's tearing up Stormcast, and it's this big impactful thing. And in this one, it was all right, well, we the Dawnbringers just defeated the extra death models that nobody buys anymore, and that was their big victory, and then founded a city. It seemed kind of anticlimactic to me. But hey, here we are. I guess it's not up to me.
Hey, there's actually a little bit of history to Embergard.
Tell me about it.
Because way back in the day, I was looking this up. So the gates below are the actual realm gates we're talking about. But in the time of tribulations, this is from Lexiconum from Age of Sigmar, the cog fort known as the Light of Hope, a part of the outer web of Hammerha Aksha, was sent to secure the gates below and build permanent fortifications around it. These endeavor ended in disaster as the Necrocraig was unleashed upon the mortal realms during this time, slaying all in the Karg fort. The Alen messenger Hawk was sent out to Heimerhal and its chamber strategic. So we have this cog fort that was sent to go found a city here that failed. And then somebody else came and founded a city here that failed. But this third time is totally going to stick. It's totally going to be great.
Third time's the charm. Everybody knows that.
Third time is the charm. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a phrase if it wasn't true.
Yep.
Well, and they have 107 years to plan for the Crimson Keep coming back.
Sure.
Oh, exactly.
So if you just put one cannon facing where it's going to be every day for 107 years, that problem's going to sort itself out.
That's going to be a lot of cannons.
Stack them all up on top of each other. That's true. So Embergard it is. I think the Ghyran Crusade, there was still some fallout, little bits of information about the crusade after sort of the main story. Were there similar bits of information about this crusade after the main story? Is there any outro info about the Axian Crusade specifically?
I guess it's the opposite of the crusade, but there's a section called The Vanished saying that no one actually knows what happens to Thungit Smold and the people that went with him. Mm-hmm. And anyone who keeps on trying to like use magic to determine their location and scry. They just see visions of flames in the night.
Ooh.
So we don't know what is going on there.
Yeah, that sounds
Seems-
funky.
A flickering lilac flame.
A lilac flame.
Lilac flame.
Lilacs are purple.
Yeah,
We've already talked about what that means.
They're probably fine. They're fine.
Yeah, I'm sure it's okay.
Yeah, they're good. It's okay.
Sure.
Don't worry about it.
They're all ghosts. Yeah, a couple other things is that near Emberguard they find within the mountain. They're near one of the mountain of Ashen Mount, and beneath the mountain they discover like tunnels. And one of the good things they find is veins of Emberstone, which is that the Realm Stone?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's really valuable. That's good to find. You can build an economy on that. And they also see signs of a city of death under there. So we thought
Probably fine though.
I'm sure they won't cause any problems.
Emberguard was fine, also, but also there's another dead thing. The whole city near there.
But-
They didn't see anybody.
But this was the death book. Like each of these Dawnbringer books is about a faction, like a major Grand Alliance, and so like the death one already happened. So like they're safe. Nothing else could come up.
But
Way to meta it.
they
Ruin
kind of
it
like
now,
see
Aaron.
ghosts sometimes. And
Well, sure. I mean, I see ghosts all the time. I mean, that's not.
yeah, that's fine.
That's common.
There is a quick little aside that I think is going to be interesting. So the Dawnbringers arrived at the ruins of Emberguard days after Legavi and Prince Fordride waged an honor duel nearby. Though the Crusaders are greater concerns than the squabbling Soulblight dynasties, the chaos-worshipping tribes of the nearby peaks would soon face undead fury. Well, that sounds interesting. Wonder who
'cause
those chaos-worshipping tribes of the nearby peaks are.
Yeah, they were saying that some of the every once in a while when the Crimson Keep like boogies on out of there, they leave Castelli vampires like all the time to get left behind, and so like maybe you could see some Blood Knights traipsing around the region as well. Other Crusade outro tidbits, if there exist any.
It just talks a lot about how even though they have the Aqualith, they're still looking for better and more sources of water.
Water sources.
Because it's still a very rare thing. So they're talking about like, oh, there's these cool cactuses we can drink from, but if they stab you, you'll broil from the inside out. So maybe not. And they're going to, it says they might explore into the mountain, hoping that there may be water underneath. And that's how they found that town of the dead.
Sure. They're hopefully connecting to Shyish. Like they're like, oh, maybe we can get like a back and forth connection to Shyish and like get some of that how do you say it? Lethesian. Lethesian. There you go. That's much better. Dark water. The memory soothing Lethesian dark water.
Yeah, it literally makes you forget stuff. So that'd be great. You should just do that and then forget the reason why you're there. It'd be fantastic.
I mean,
sure there won't be a problem with that.
Some drink to remember. Some drink to forget. I didn't sing it. Other Axian thoughts. Keep them coming. All right, cool beans. I know we're chomping at the bit to talk about some of the other storylines, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm going to go out of order from the outline. But we've talked about the Ghyran Crusade. We've talked about the Axian Crusade. But as these Dawnbringers do a really great job, is they pepper in a few other perspectives, foreshadowing, bits of point of view from others across the mortal realms. And so there are a few other storylines here. Let me use this as a way to introduce some listener questions. What you guys thought we forgot about listener questions, but we did not. I never forget about listener questions. And hey, dear listener, if you want to get a question on the show, this show that you're listening to right now, what you got to do is you got to hang out in our Discord server, which is found at www.themortalrealms.com/discord. And once there, you hang out in the stories and lore channel, hang out there all the time, chat with your friends, chat with your enemies. I don't know. And every once in a while, unannounced, I'll pop in and say, hey, we're going to do an episode. Do you have any questions about X, Y, or Z topic? You do have questions. You ask them. I copy and paste them into a different Word document to make my life more difficult. And then I put them in the show notes and I read them. Like I'm going to read this one right here. In that patron of the show, Mealhern. Thank you, Mealhern. Asks, will we find out what happens to Kragnos and about the many other characters mentioned in books 1 and 2? First question, Kragnos. No, absolutely not. But there are some other characters, which is why I bring it up here from the other books that we could talk about. Did anybody have characters that have maybe had appearances in previous books that are mentioned in this book that they want to talk about?
Well, we've got Korgus Cool, which
There you go.
I don't think he's been specifically mentioned, but like his army is around.
No, and he was. We had his perspective in the
do we?
book.
Well, I apologize then. So he's just basically his entire entry is I got to go make a big enough pile of blood so that Vandus has to come face me. That's it. It's good and it's well written, much more written than I spoke. But yeah, so he's just like, hey, I'm still here and I still got to kill a whole bunch of stuff. So you better find out soon.
True. And speaking of Korgus Cole, there's a question tangentially related by a patron of the show, Chrisling. Hey, thanks, Chrisling. They ask, any news on Her Highness in Ruin? Who do you think will be repping Chaos in Dawnbringers Book 5? First question, any mention of Highness in Ruin? No.
Nope.
But second part of the question, that's why I'm asking all these questions, is all your guys' first halves are no, but your second halves are, who do I think is going to be repping Chaos in Dawnbringers Book 5? Maybe Korgus Cole. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's my guess.
Yeah,
I think Her Highness in Ruin and Korgus Cole are going to be like the two main bads in Book 5.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Korgus Cole is the only one they've talked about, really.
Mm-hmm.
They've been some rough pointing in a few other directions. Be'lakor, Varangard, Nurgle generally. My only hesitation why they wouldn't do Korgus Cole is if they are saving him for a, this is kind of metagaming it, but saving him for a Age of Sigmar 4th edition reveal.
Sure, could be.
Leaning that way feels like.
Interesting. All right. So that's one little tidbit. Korgus Cole gets brought back into this book. Are there other little foreshadowing stories that caught your guys' interest from this one?
One really stood out to me because at the Sigmar Alias show, I said Manfred's going to be making big moves this year. And we've got Manfred, baby.
Yeah.
He's here. He's making moves specifically. And this actually will answer another listener question, which is from Minervis, which is, what's up with Archon? Is he back from the dead? The answer is no, because Manfred is raiding all of Archon's little vaults, trying to steal all of his treasures.
Mm-hmm.
Because Manfred, if anything, is always going to betray the other Mortarchs of Death and take their power for his own. He doesn't get too far in this story with it, because as he's entering the tomb, he sees like green light and a bunch of rats coming at him, and he just moonwalks away, deciding he doesn't want to deal with that today, and just heads on out.
So whose tomb is this?
So it's one of Archon's, it's like a vault he has that he stores things. Manfred comes in, he's killing a bunch of the Null Myriad OCR Bone Reapers, hoping to steal treasures. He finds rats instead and just turns around and walks away, just not wanting to deal with it.
Doesn't he say something like he knows that Archon isn't gone forever? Like he says you can't keep that guy down. So he knows that Archon's going to come back and probably be mad is my interpretation of this. But we as the audience probably knew for sure that Archon, he wasn't going to be gone forever. But it's nice to hear the book's reference that in universe, it's acknowledged that he's not gone forever either. So
I'm with you that I don't mind that characters die and come back as long as there was consequences to it.
Yeah.
As long as it was meaningful.
And one consequence is if you die, Manfred's going to try and steal your stuff.
But I think there's a bigger consequence here with Nagash being gone. There's a lot more infighting and death, as you would expect when Dad's gone. All of the the players beneath him are jockeying for power, which brings me to another cutaway, which is zooming in on the Bone Reapers, who are in the middle of a war against Sigmar's empire in Lyria, which is in a desert kingdom. Have we heard of this place before?
It's just a place in Shaiish.
Yeah.
It's on the maps.
Cool. Well, and the Bone Reapers are winning the war, but then they get a command that is, don't fight, shore up all defenses. And it was an empire-wide decree coming straight from Catacross. And so he's just like, hey, everybody stop what you're doing, garrison up. Things are popping off, which is and what I assume is it's like, oh, super death war, because Ushoran is out, the vampires are moving against each other. Like, it's really like death intra faction conflict is the time is now. And so that was really cool. Or it's something else, because Katakros is notably and also surprisingly, and because nothing's happened with this plot line in a while, currently fighting a war against Archon, the Ever-Chosen, in the 8 points. So maybe it's related. It could be related to that too.
And normally he seems like he'd be a pretty unflappable guy. So for him to like react in that way, like, it makes you think that it's probably not an overreaction, whatever his concern is. So.
Yeah. He's never lost a war or a battle.
No, never.
Anytime he struck down, he learned something, and that's the true victory.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the friends were
the more you know.
There's a little tidbit about Callus Toll. I think. Were we talking about him before the episode, or I can't remember when we were talking about Callus Toll? But they're in Hammerhall. They're hanging out. They're worried about this. We've talked about the was it King's Blood is the name of the wine, but like they're hot on the trail of getting to the bottom of all that. And what's interesting here is that the Weaver is one of their allies, right?
Yeah.
And so basically they find out via the Weaver that there are others in Hammerhall who are of the same mind or maybe on the same side, and they didn't potential secret allies that could, at first glance, may seem to be Cainite based off of the iconography that they use, but they are given a hint that they're not Cainite in the traditional sense, but rather they're a splinter cell dedicated to some minor brethren deity of their god. They call themselves the Crone Heralds. Now, listener, if you've been following Warhammer news lately, we know that we know the name of the next book, and we've seen the next model that's coming up. So this is obviously going to be directly tied into the sequel of the next Dawnbringer book. But let it be known that they have addressed it here in The Mad King Rises as well. I think there's maybe one more. Does anybody want to talk about, or maybe at least one more, if not more than that, the one more connection, I guess, the fallout between Neferata and Ushoran?
Okay, yeah. So there's just a great little story of them having a conversation. So the queen has like formed like a blood mirage that she's talking to him from, Neferata, and she's really mad because she's had this whole venture of spreading his blood and spreading everything, and he is finally kind of showing his hand of like, oh, I'm a little bit more sane. Thank you for doing this, but since it's my blood and my wine, I'm going to start spreading it around. And he mentions that he's going to rejoin the councils and have a lot more interactions with the rest of the Martarchs. And it says, it's not in this section, but elsewhere it mentions that all of the ships that were being captained by vampires kind of shipping the blood, the ghouls have now taken over. So there's just pirate ghouls sailing the seas, kind of spreading this king's blood.
Love that.
Yeah, pirate ghouls. The best type of ghouls, if you ask me. All right. I think those are some great foreshadowing. Those are great little hooks for upcoming events, and they've hooked me. They always do. It's my favorite part. It's never when I'm reading. Mm-hmm. It's always what could be coming up next is my favorite thing to read. Any other foreshadowing thoughts? Did we miss anything? All right, cool. Normally around here is when I'd start talking about sort of like new characters that have been introduced. Oddly enough, one of the quote unquote new characters is Ushoran himself, the Mad King who is rising. Just real quick, let me just review to make sure that we know everything there is to know and see if we missed anything. And by that, I mean, we can use a question from a listener to sort of jumpstart the conversation. Patron of the show, Chrisling. Hey, thanks, Chrisling. They ask, on a scale of 1 to wearing intestines on your head, how insane is Ushoran really? And then I'll ask the second question right off the bat. Patron of the show, Armoire Enthusiast 7. Insert joke about 7, not 6 or 8 here. They ask, jumping off this, what's the craziest thing that he has done? So let's just broadly speak. Hey, Ushoran, maybe not as crazy as we thought he is. What did we learn about him in this book that maybe we didn't know from the Battle Tome? Or previous iterations of him in the past. What do you guys? What do you think?
I think that the main thing we learned is that he's a more sane and more conniving than we had expected. The scale's a little off because it's a scale of 1 to wearing intestines on your head. But as we know, Gormain is the most sane.
Pretty sane.
He's the one with the intestines on his head. So I guess that's the most sane you can get. And he's not too far off, I would say.
Sure. Paul or Pavin, what do you think?
I'd say he's on that scale. I'd say he's got like, a spoiled fish in his pocket. Like nothing too bad, but like he would notice that there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He is portrayed very much as like, I kind of have control. But I think there's definitely a little bit of like, he's a bit crazy. He's got a prison on his forehead from Nagash. And he also, did go through solitary confinement and destroyed his mind. So I think he's having momentary flashes of brilliance followed by, eons of insanity. So
sure. Pavin, any additional thoughts, or do you have any input on what's the craziest thing that he's done thus far?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's the craziest thing, but like the most shocking thing was definitely eating
that was my answer.
boy alive was quite shocking. Yeah, I think they've done something really cool with his character, which makes him quite a wild card because you don't know if he's like plotting or nuts, or if he like justifies his craziness by saying it was part of the plan. So you really don't know where he's coming from. So he's a really great wild card in a faction that can be pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
I guess that's not true anymore. Like all the vampires are kind of wild cards.
Yeah,
and so Death very cool faction. I'm ready for Soul Wars 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
I think a good way of describing him is like he's not stupid. He's just delusional. Mm-hmm. Like there's an intelligence there. It's just maybe not aiming in the right direction all the time.
Sure. And the question is like, does he think he's aiming in the right? Is he aiming in the direction he intends to? Which is a different question. So there's that. I agree. Eating Soulbright is probably the craziest thing that he has done. Though I'm interested to see what antics he gets up to, like on I don't know if it's a council, but like the Mortark group chat to see like what he gets up to.
Mortark WhatsApp.
Sure. I mean, honestly, frankly, I want to see as many interactions between all the Mortarks as possible. Like all of them are for the most part their own individuals, right? And to see them bounce off each other would be really cool. So that'll be fun. A new character that we didn't talk about in depth yet necessarily is Sakaar, Fang of New Lamia. Maybe we learned a fair bit about her as a person because she's just this beautiful vampire, conniving, et cetera, agent of Neferata. But is there more to mine there? Also, I think someone should try and tell me about the snake because I feel like we just scratched the surface a little bit. Any Sakaar thoughts that you guys want to share about?
I enjoy the snake a lot.
The snake enjoys you.
That's true. The snake is a god of the underworld of Shayesh that has been taken by Nagash, but not completely destroyed. And then given as a pet to Sakaar, which I think is like crazy as an idea, but also super fun and flavorful. And so as Will was saying, he was like, oh, I don't want to give him too much power. Like this is a constant struggle where she has this like really strong ally, but if she gives him too much power, then he's just going to destroy her. So I thought that was super fun. As far as the character of Sakaar herself, she's considered to be the chief diplomat of Neferata. So she's going to be really tricksy and really conniving, which she was portrayed as that in the story. But she also is portrayed as a bit arrogant as well. Yeah. And which is paying off with her not really figuring out that Ushoran was going to destroy her because she was messing with his stuff, right? Basically. So
classic blunder.
I thought that was really fun. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Because it says like she got her name by in the middle of a huge feast, just like standing up, like not even asking for permission and just like pointing out two massive conspiracies that she was a part of and having them taken away. Like, and instead she did it very calmly. Like, she knew she had all this in the bag. So I think that's where a lot of that pride comes from, is she's like, oh yeah, no, I'm the manipulator. No one could ever betray me. I'm fine.
Hubris, pride goeth before the fall. Other Sakaar thoughts, or we summed her up.
I think it was cool with the gift of the snake. It was Nagash being paranoid that the snake would gain power because he wasn't able to eat it. Did we already mention this, that he tried to swallow the snake, but like he does all the gods, but he spit up the skin, like it just didn't agree with him, and so the snake like lived on. He's like, ooh, I don't like this. Like, what if it eats me? Here, Sakaar, here's a gift. Here, this terrible snake. You watch over it.
Keep an eye on it. Yeah,
keep an eye on it. And so that's how you like send it away. So
yeah, that is fun.
Nagash is a mean boss.
That is for sure. All right, cool. So maybe we ask a couple more listener questions. Well, we got them. There's not too many, so we can rattle those off. Hey, Chrisling had another good one, patron of the show. Thanks, Chrisling. They ask, any scries on how you think the events of Dawnbringers are going to usher in Age of Sigmar 4th edition? I think at one point someone predicted that maybe this Korg's Cole might have something to do with it. Do you guys have any other connection points between Dawnbringers and what you think is going to be the 4th edition? So not the end of Dawnbringers, but kick it. Well, maybe it's one and the same, but kick it out to the future of 4th edition. What do you think is maybe the most telling, impactful, like signpost that we've seen thus far that's going to lead to that?
So I don't know if this is like an edition thing, but we've got a lot of stuff built up with Ushoran and the Mortarks, and there feels like they're getting ready for a big Mortark brawl. I don't know if that's going to be like the edition box, but I feel like when the edition kicks off, we're going to see that conflict fully ignite.
Yeah, very well could be. I mean, even for a not death focused like edition of 3rd, like we're still getting a fair bit of death at the back end. And so I could see how it would lead in. Other thoughts on how this might lead to the 4th edition?
It doesn't really.
You don't think so?
I think more last book did, in that it started to seem to wrap up Kragnos a bit. It felt like 2nd edition, the Soul Wars ended when Teclis killed Nagash.
Sure.
Which was really cool.
Yeah, awesome.
And so, I know, Kragnos is going to get tricked once again, and that will be the end of the era of the beast, which they foreshadow in the last book, but they don't pick up that thread at all in this bit.
Yeah, book. True.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of waiting to see where that goes, because
sure. Other thoughts before I keep going? Because man, we had a lot of patron questions. Thanks, patrons, both for your patronage and your sweet questions. Patron of the show, Klaus M.A. Patron of the show, friend of the show, Klaus. They ask, how are the Dawnbringers stacking up against Broken Realms? I think we talk about this every episode, but we can talk about it again here too. So 4th book in, and there was only 4 Broken Realms books, right? 4? Yeah. So like, let's try and equate the two. At this point, how do we feel they're stacking up against those books? And if you have the same thoughts as before, you could say refer to previous episode.
I like the story of Dawnbringers more, but we haven't had quite as many world-shaking, realm-shaking events. But we did get Ushoran back, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And as far as like the model release, I'm 100% behind these model releases being a lot more interesting. And I really like the fact that we are following 2 plot lines. And even though they go like completely wonky in following the thread, we still have something to hold on. And so we have these like 2 long, drawn out plot lines of what's going from here and what's going from there and everything that's in that area. And I really like the exploration aspect of that.
Sure.
And to me, I really enjoy world building, and I feel like there's a ton of world building in these books. Whereas I feel like Broken Realms was more of like realm shaking events, which was also cool, but it is in a different way. So
sure.
Yeah.
Willard Paven.
I think Broken Realms is like high points are definitely higher than Dawnbringers, but I also think its low points are definitely lower than Dawnbringers. I feel like this is like right down. I think like on average, I like Dawnbringers more because each book I think is really good, and I really like the. I see you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
You're the Mad King.
Part of it is that like a lot of the battles in Broken Realms just have like the 3-point turn. They're winning. Now they are. Okay, battle's
Good way
over.
to put it. Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot more story focused than it is showing a battle that way. So I think we're getting a little bit more, like Paul said, world building and I think character building more than anything. Like Broken Realms, we saw these godlike characters, but we didn't get insights into them. And now we're getting insights into the characters we do see.
I gotcha. Cool. Hey, Payman, what do you think?
I like Broken Realms was very good as far as Warhammer fiction. Gave me everything I wanted. I think every one of the Dawnbringers books gets better as it builds on the previous one. Although we could have not had book one. I think we should have not had it.
Yeah, agreed.
And so they're getting more exciting and more interesting, and I like that we're getting somewhere. My only really big complaint, and I had also complaints about Broken Realms and like kind of the tropes and narrative devices they did to move things along, but of the like, oh, we have these allies and they leave for some reason seems to have happened a lot. Like, oh, these are very natural allies that should join us in this effort, but they have this other secondary task they just need to attend now. And then they leave. And I was like, well, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited for book 5. Is that the last one? Do we know?
I don't know that we know officially.
Feels like it.
You goofball. So, just as far as the answer, honestly, I don't know that I will answer the question. I might say refer to my previous entries in that I don't know that my opinion has changed all that much. I will say I would normally agree with you, Paven, that each one was better than the last. However, I don't know that this one was better. Book 4 was better than book 3. I don't think this one felt more fillery to me than usual, and I guess I'll talk about more. I'll in the review part. I'll maybe expand on why I think that, or I'll forget that I mentioned it and I won't bring it up again.
I'll bring it up again because I don't disagree with half of it.
Okay, gotcha. So I think I'm still team. It's not a team, but Broken Realms. Though this does certain things the Dawnbringers does differently and better. So like there are to maybe Will's point, there are things that it does do. Better than what the Broken Realms did. And frankly, I love continuity. And so like the fact that they are direct sequels and like they are intrinsically linked from one book to the next, I'm a sucker for that too. Yeah, I won't add too much more than that. Other tidbits that you guys want to bring up before we just get to the end and give our final thoughts? All right, let's do the darn thing. All right, so we'll go in the same order. Hey, Paul, what'd you think of The Mad King Rises?
I would probably do 6 out of 8 spider legs. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Ghyran plotline more than I enjoyed the Actually plotline. But I did not enjoy the Actually plotline. It was a different one. It felt, I don't know. It felt like they had more joy writing the first one than the second one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
And that being said, I enjoyed the Laukavai perspective, but then we didn't get the Castellai perspective at all. And I think that's part of why I didn't like the second one as much, was because it was set up as it's the Avangori versus the Castellai. And then we didn't see that whole battle.
We didn't even it happened off screen.
It happened off screen. It was like, sir, not appearing in this film, Prince Vordry, right? And I felt a little bit of like, oh, I kind of wanted to, like, that sounded cool. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Cool. I don't forget who went next. Paven's next? Yeah, Paven. Hit me up.
Oh, it was great. These are great. These are the best. These are the best Warhammer books, these campaign books. I think they're still very good.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I was yearning for more intra-death intrigue. Like, I really like the setup between the factions and the tension at the Summer Court. That was my favorite part of the book. Mm-hmm. And I'm like a little sad that it got resolved in this book. I'd rather they like leave a courtly intrigue drama playing on.
Sure.
So that was like the best part. I really enjoyed it. I liked the rest of the book. I'm happy we founded a city. That was a pleasant surprise.
I mean, did we? I don't even. It happened so quick.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll see. And yeah, I'm really excited for the next one. These are great.
Yeah. Hey, Will, I am. Will, you are.
Hey, yeah, so I also really liked the first half, but I'm a Ghoul fan, so there's a heavy bias in that.
Sure.
And I think my thing with the Ashian half is that we're like, did they found the city? They kind of fought the filler. So when you were saying like this felt more fillery than the rest, I feel like the Akshi side is very filler.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they could have easily resolved it by having that final fight to establish Emberguard being against the Castelli dynasty. Yeah. Like, instead it was just no-name necromancers and a bunch of skeletons, and they folded pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're founding the city, which maybe they do that in the next book and they have a big battle, or I don't know. But it didn't feel as climactic as like actually building the city in the book series about building the cities. It didn't feel like it should have felt.
Yeah, agreed.
But I didn't dislike what happened. I just felt like it needed more zhuzhing up right there at the end.
Yeah, I didn't see the building the city either. And we don't see the classic Dawnbringer city building scene.
Yeah.
I expected, right? Of like, here are the statues and here's the, yeah. So.
Yeah. And I get it. They wanted to end on the big climactic, like, we did it. We won the battle. But it just didn't feel like that.
Sure.
In fact, the characters didn't even feel like that, because he even said like, oh yeah, the banner heralder climbed the ruins and barely anyone noticed. I think is like the last line of that section. And that's what it felt like in the audience.
Other thoughts? Other additional thoughts?
No, I'll just give it 3 out of 4 flesh eater quartz.
Cool. I won't repeat your action take because that's my take as well. So ditto. But then furthermore, although the Ghyran side was better, I think a lot of the Ghyran thunder was stolen by what we had learned from the battle tome. We had talked about we talked about the battle tome. We predicted that like, oh, this kind of feels a little out of order, and that one is cannibalizing the other a little bit. What? That's silly. And I think that ended up being maybe not as true as I thought it was going to be, but still some amount of true, in that like a lot of the setup was in the battle tome. So it took away some of that would have been like a real impactful reveal, the things that we learned or that we read about in this book, if it was the first time I'd even heard about it, but it wasn't like it sort of had lost some of its shine because it was talked about in the battle tome. Obviously not all of it, not the events, the plot per se, but just sort of the setup. And so because of that, on the Ashian side being kind of a dud, and then the Ghyran side, the thrill kind of taking some of the wind out of its sails on both sides, then it ended up being a bit of a filler book for me. Which, not to say it's bad. And maybe if taken as a whole, like if I were to just read all the Dawnbringers, however many they're going to end up being all the way straight through, maybe this is just an ebb and flow, up and down sort of, like watching a TV show, like when you binge it, right? Like I probably wouldn't have necessarily noticed, but the fact that we sort of have to wait for these books to come out, for this one to have landed the way it did, it didn't hit me as hard. But again, I'm sure it probably feeds into what is coming up. A lot of this stuff is going to be necessary. And so it's going to be set up for, some big landing eventually, though. Honestly, I'm interested to see where it goes. We don't know where the Ghyran Crusade is going to end up. And apparently we're hanging out in Emberguard. So like what comes next? I suppose we know a little bit, but the reveal that GW did for the next book, but I still don't get a sense of where like the story is going to go. So more to come on that front. Cool. Any other thoughts that you guys have before we get the heck out of here? Too bad, Mr. Chance. It's time for our fortune. But Sigmar Willen will be back soon. Like, subscribe, share, or leave a review. Join us on Discord, drop a tip on our Patreon. Anything you can do will spread the word of Sigmar farther than we can on our own. Chat with us anytime about your thoughts on Twitter @TheMortalRealms. Hey, Paul, where can they find you on the internet?
@PJ Shard.
Hey, Paven, where can they find you online?
Don't.
Yeah. Hey, Will, where can they find you on the World Wide Web?
On Blue Sky @Sever.
And I'm Aaron, and you can find me at Twitter and probably most other places at Dos Asos. And you can find all our Mortal Realms shows and content at www.themortalrealms.com. Cool. Any other thoughts that you guys have before we get the heck out of here? Too bad, Mr. Chance. I'm sorry. Were you about to say something? If not, okay.
No, I was saying no.
All right, nice. All right, in that case, it's time for our Reforging. One of the name dude on foot.
I call him Spartacast. I can't think of it now.
What is the guy's name?
Sure.
I mean, the point is that like all these name characters are coming back in these Dawnbringers, which is neat. What is that dude's name? I have him.
Sure, it's sure
Gabriel
something.
Shorehart.
Gabriel
Yeah.
Sherhart. Yeah, there you go. So like, there's another name character from early days that